What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, I think we're switching gears back to the 1000 SP. We're gonna get that over here into the lift bay, and I think we're taking the body back off because there's so much to do on this car yet. You know, the goal is to drive it. You know, that's the goal. The motor's been running. And if you're new to the channel, it's a 1960 Auto Union 1000 SP. It's down over a 1959 Volkswagen Beetle pan now, and we haven't driven it yet. A lot of framework has been done. We have all the body mounts done. It's rolling, it's steering. It's on air suspension, so it can raise up and lay down. Now my goal is to go a little bit lower with this ultimately when it's aired out, just a little bit. Max from Eva Resto, who has helped support this project from day one, we are using their complete bolt-in bag kit for an early Beetle. This is for a swing arm rear end. We have the full bolt-in rear subframe and the narrowed front bag beam with everything else that comes with that kit. Track rods, lower shock relocators, drop spindles, everything. But to complete that overall kit, Max has sent over a 1-inch cradle riser. As you can see here, we got 1 inch. And this ultimately bolts in where your transmission does, right? So these are your transmission mounts here and here, and your transmission cradles in it, and then the motor bolts to that. And what this does is this helps allow the transmission to bolt 1 inch higher than it normally would. And in a Volkswagen Beetle, that's crucial if you want to go super low. Like if you want to put your running boards on the ground, you need one of those. He makes a few different increments. I think he even had a 2-inch riser in his personal Beetle, which means you have to change everything in the engine bay. Your engine tin, your exhaust, all sorts of stuff. But in the 1000 SP, we're already doing a ton of custom work, so why not just do a little bit more? Now before we move the Corvair out of the lift bay, I was kind of saving some of this for a full maintenance episode, but I haven't done fuel filters in this car in a long time, and I am trying to drive this thing more this fall. Going to be trying to take it to the Caffeine and Octane Cars and Coffee meet just north of Atlanta, September 1st. Ordered a bunch more parts and going to be doing some routine maintenance on this thing, so there'll be more content on this car coming up soon. For right now, going to do some replacement stone fuel filters that go right in the carburetor housings on these Rochester carburetors. And yeah, just see what the old ones look like essentially. So we'll do that first. Then we'll get it started, and we'll swap some cars around. All right, fuel filters are in. Second one was just as bad as the first. I don't know if you guys can see it, but there was just a load of grime and soot inside these filters. Now, a lot of times you can just clean these things out, spray the daylights out of them with carb cleaner, blow them out with air, and put them back in. But I was already buying a pair for the white car, assuming that that motor wasn't seized up and we'd be driving it by now. So I just ordered a second pair, and we just put brand new ones in the carburetors here in the Monza. Okay, we are once again separated, body off the pan. And I think this time around, I'm gonna take more advantage of having the body off. I'm getting quicker and quicker at it, the more the body came together with the frame inside it. As far as separating it goes, once all the body mounts were made, and once more the frame came together, I can get it on and off a little bit easier. It's still kind of a pain to set everything up because I don't pull it right off of the pan with it on the ground. Put it up on jack stands first. But I think this time I'm going to finish weld some stuff up on the frame, clean up a lot of the surface rust from the haul to Canada, and actually paint most of the frame. So that way we don't have any reoccurring surface rust, since all this stuff is just bare metal. So this is just gonna make things easier. Before I pulled the body off, I did kind of stare into the engine bay a little bit more with the engine in it. And I'm pretty positive if I remove the exhaust system, I have enough room to pull that off of the shaft and drop the motor out below the body. So it's really key to know whether or not I can get that motor out when the car is one unit. Because once the car is done and it's wired and sheet metal work's done, firewalls are in, interior's in, all that, it's just gonna be a little bit more time consuming, a lot more time consuming to pull the body off. So although it will remain a two-piece car, it'll basically be a lot more involved to pull the body off. As you can see, this is a Type 3 motor, and I removed the mustache motor mount in the back. And I really haven't decided if I want to build some motor mounts off of this part of the frame to come out to meet the mustache mount. If you're a Volkswagen air-cooled guy, leave in the comments below if you've ever Type 3 swapped a Beetle pan and not run that motor mount. What do you think? It's technically the same motor. We've got an aluminum fan casing, and I can't imagine the Type 3 motor is significantly heavier than the Type 1 motor. So I can't imagine there's a lot more weight out here that really needs to be supported that the 4 original motor mount bolts to the bell housing of the transmission couldn't handle. And Beetle motors rely on just those 4 motor mounts anyway. All right, so here again is the EvaResto 1-inch engine riser. So luckily we have brand new transmission mounts already in the pan, so we don't have to worry about replacing those. Those are brand new. So let's get this motor out, and I'll take another look inside the transmission, because for the life of me, I can't remember if I've already done a new clutch in this. I think I've got a new throwout bearing on the clutch fork. Can't seem to remember if I have a new clutch in there or not. Although the casters were messed up on this thing right out of the box, this here is the best tool for removing a Beetle motor. Picked this up from Harbor Freight. This is just a motorcycle lift, motorcycle / ATV lift. It's got rubber pads on it. This has removed and installed numerous Beetle motors. All right, just gonna put some pressure on the motor as I remove the 4 motor mount bolts. It just reaches with this header on. Just reaches. All right, so most of you guys may already know this, but Volkswagen Beetle motors have 4 bolts that hold the motor to the transmission, and then the transmission sits on the frame horns right there. So these are the actual like motor mount transmission mounts, and then the motor floats beyond it. So those bolts are this top one here, and that threads in on this style. So no nut on the back side, that threads in from the bell housing side. Then a starter bolt here, and as you can see, the casting on that starter captives the bolt. So we have, I remember getting a bolt that was a little too long, but there's a nut on the motor side. So we might take the air cleaner system off to just get better access to that. And then 2 lowers. They're all 17 mil, right down in there. Okay. Yeah, we're free. And we're out. Honestly, the easiest motor to remove and install. Well, that's all there is to it. That's the Type 3 motor out. Just 4 bolts. My memory served correctly. We've got a new throwout bearing in there, and I have a new clutch. Okay, so to recap essentially why anyone would want to do this is for better axle and suspension geometry when you're super low, but also to get your motor up off the ground. Because when you've lowered your car as far as you can go, and usually in this scenario, it's a Volkswagen Beetle, but in my scenario, we have an auto union on top of a Beetle. Your engine and exhaust hits the ground first. I don't know exactly what hits the ground first with a Beetle. I'm pretty sure it's the motor. And replacing this piece here, this cradle, will raise everything up 1 inch or 1.5 inches or 2 inches. And that allows for your car to go lower because now the engine's been raised. But also what it does is it helps alleviate your suspension geometry. Because when the car's all the way on the ground, your axle angle is just crazy. And when you bring the engine up another inch, it helps alleviate that angle. So those are two of the main reasons why this is even done in the first place, so you can go lower and your suspension can relax a little bit more while going lower. Okay, so you'll notice that the transmission mounts have studs on the outside of the bell housing, but also on the inside. And that's how the mount itself is removable and replaceable. It bolts to the bell housing of the transmission, so the access points are inside the bell housing, and it also bolts to the factory cradle here, which is what we're ultimately replacing with the EvaResto cradle. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna unbolt it from the outside, that way the mounts stay bolted to the transmission. I'll get a jack underneath the transmission inside the frame horns here to bring the transmission up. We'll get the cradle off, and the transmission will be up high enough to where the new cradle that goes on that's higher, we can set it back down and we'll bolt everything together. All right, so we have the transmission mounts unbolted, and I've got a jack underneath the transmission now, lifting it up above the cradle. So now the cradle is ready to come out. Wowee. All right, guys, so here's the noticeable difference in sizes of the factory engine cradle, or transmission cradle, essentially, to the EvaResto 1-inch riser. And you can just see how much more material is at the bottom. The factory one is just thin steel with the lip, and the EvaResto is just way beefier. Now, before taking all of this stuff apart, I didn't show you the height of the car in relation to where it'll be when we get this in. But that can't be seen with how the car is sitting right now, because the car sits on the sills. So at the same time that the sills, the rocker panels, sit on the concrete floor, so does the exhaust. So essentially everything sat pretty level. I cut the pinch welds off the sills. That gained us another 3/4 of an inch drop to where the body lays completely out now, at least on the sills. At the very same time, the flange of our headers to tailpipe system also sat flat on the concrete floor. So what this is gonna do is it's gonna help get the exhaust up off the ground so we can go a little bit more with the body. I'm gonna cut a little bit more out of those sills. We're not taking all of them or half of them like I talked about earlier on in this build series, but we are gonna take about another 3/4 of an inch to where the factory jack points are. You can see the notch where the factory jack point is. That's how far we're gonna go. We're gonna basically cut along, and that'll sit on the ground right there. But I've mentioned it before on the channel, the point of that is what you can see right here. How much lower the sill sits than the back part of the valance and fender on the body, as well as the front. I mean, look at how much lower the bottom of that sill sits than the front and rear valance. And to do that, the EvaResto 1-inch cradle riser will get us there. Okay, so let's see if we have the transmission up high enough to get this thing on. Okay. I'll give it one more. Okay. Well, it looks like we can bolt this on without having to move the clamps for the stabilizer arm. So let's just see how this goes in. All right, so we got all 4 mounts started, all 4 bolts rather. Now I will tighten the cradle up, just make sure all of our alignment looks good. All right, guys, well, that is the 1-inch EvaResto engine riser, cradle mounted. Everything's lined up. It's just a little bit of a fight to get those inner mount bolts started. From factory, they go down through with the bolts. With the EvaResto, we run them up through with the nut on top, only because there's limited space for the bolt head against the brackets that support where the bolt goes through for the actual cradle. But other than that, everything went together fine. Doing this modification to your car is the perfect opportunity to replace your transmission mounts. It's the perfect opportunity. You're literally raising it off the cradle. Also, I don't want to jinx it yet, but my theory is on our full droop issue to get the wheels off of the car with the body down. That's in a previous episode. Our droop limitation was the axle sitting on the frame horn. Now, naturally, you would think raising this up 1 inch would get us 1 inch up farther into the body, making it even harder to get these wheels on and off, if not impossible. But what my theory is, when we unhook all this stuff here and let it go down even farther, we've now raised this 1 inch off of the frame horn. And this hasn't seemed to go up at all. I didn't take a measurement off the floor or anything, but I'm wondering if going up 1 inch in here will allow this to droop even farther. So I'm wondering if doing this hasn't hindered us from getting the wheels off the car with the body on, but actually helped us. So we'll find out later on. But if that modification literally helped us, then going for all the lows with this car has been a benefit in more than one way. All right, next morning, cradle is in. And before I put the motor back in, I think I'm gonna work on the frame a little bit. So with this going up 1 inch, it didn't quite go up 1 inch at the forward mount, right? It leaned back. And taking that into consideration back when I was building the frame, this is why some of you guys may recall when I boxed in my rear parcel shelf, but also cross member and rear body mounts, I decided to not run one square tube piece all the way across. I decided to break it up and run angle. So I designed it this way, knowing that I was going to run this engine cradle riser. I ran the angle that direction with this notch because of that ear right there that sits up. That right there basically lands right about here. And it's leaning back a little bit. How much, I don't know yet. We'll know as soon as we set the body down. But that's why I ultimately did that. And this isn't load bearing here. This is just gonna carry sheet metal. Our rear firewall is gonna fall down onto this, and our management is gonna be mounted on top of this, just like it kind of was earlier when we took it to Canada. All right, so I got some welding done on the chassis inside the body and got some paint work done too. Didn't really focus on painting the whole tube chassis, but I just got some parts done that I could get to right now without masking off all the windows and some of the original paint in the engine bay and up front in the old engine bay that I want to keep. There is some of the original paint with patina that I want to keep. I finished welding up some of the cross member pieces just to make sure I don't forget some of it once we start driving it later on. So I think we're ready to put the motor back in, and we'll set the body down, and hopefully we don't have any clearance issues with raising the engine and the transmission up 1 inch at the back of it. think we're just about there. Oh yeah. Let's see if I can. Just like that. Well, that is the motor put back in and an inch higher at the back, actually more than an inch at the back here, because the cradle is in at the forward part of the motor. So that's an inch rise there. This has come up more than an inch. All right, we're all bolted down, all the body mounts. So let's get the lift arms out of here. Pretty excited, although I can tell that that engine is far higher in the engine bay, or previously the trunk, than it was before. So I won't shut this quite yet. I think we've got it. I think we've got it. But we've got a pretty good curvature on the trunk, and we could always, if for some reason in the middle this hits, we could always notch this. We could always relief cut this and plate it back in or something. It does look like we have clearance on the transmission, which is amazing. I mean, millimeters to spare. That was an area of concern, which we've alleviated. Let's just see what our hood clearance is to the top of the motor. Okay, moment of truth. Oh, I think we're good. Oh, I think we're good. Yeah, I don't think we're hitting anything. Keeping it on the jack stands gets you a better angle up underneath. No, I don't think we're hitting anything, guys. That is fantastic. Man, that's great news. Let's go lower. All right, guys, we are down off the jack stands, and this is the most exciting part of the whole process. About to air this thing down and let it touch the concrete floor, and we will know from our exhaust touching the floor how much we'll be able to take out of the sills and ultimately get this thing even lower to the ground when it's aired out. Well, guys, I think this is mission accomplished. We are sitting flat out on the floor as per usual, but what's not as usual is our exhaust system also laying on the concrete. Look at how high up that exhaust system is now. I can't even believe the clearance we have. With the stock cradle, that exhaust system sat flat out on the concrete at this height, and now it's over an inch off the ground, which will give us more than enough clearance to go as low as I really want to go with this thing, which is just a little bit more. So that is a huge win for this project. That was a crucial component to add. So stoked on this project, guys. We have a lot to do mechanically. I cannot wait to drive this thing. Man. So again, a huge thanks to Max, Jesse, and everyone at EvaResto over in England for being a huge part of this project and helping make most of it possible. So if you have a Volkswagen Beetle, Karmann Ghia, any Beetle Pan project, please hit up EvaResto. As I've mentioned in the past, most of their clientele is here in America, so don't let the international shipping or shipping times scare you. I'm gonna leave you guys off there. Thank you so much for watching. Another huge step on the 1000 SP project. Please remember to subscribe to the channel. Hit the notification bell. It's been an unbelievable year of growth for the channel, and I have worked so hard at trying to document everything I'm doing here. Thank you so much again for watching. We'll see you guys in the next episode.